Assalamu alaikum. I'm sure everybody is doing very fine. Today's lecture is protein folding and quaternary structure of protein. How the proteins are folded, what are the factors which are required for the folding, and if it is not properly folded, it may lead to a very serious clinical consequences. And then we'll discuss quaternary structure of protein in today's lecture. Protein folding. A folding of a long polypeptide chain into the intricate three-dimensional shape, a complicated three-dimensional shape of the functional protein depends upon interactions between the side chains of amino acids. Protein folding, which occurs within the cell in seconds to minutes. Interactions which influence the folding process. Positively and negatively charged side chain attract. Similarly, charged side chains repel each other. Interactions involving hydrogen bonds. Hydrophobic interactions also affect the protein folding, and the disulfide bonds which are present in the interpeptide chain or between the different amino acids. I gave you the example of cysteine. When the two cysteine amino acids combine together, that is by disulfide bond. Now, steps in protein folding. The first is the primary structure. This is the secondary structure, where you can see the alpha helix and beta sheets. This is the tertiary structure. This is the domain. When alpha helix and repetitive, non-repetitive beta pleated sheets are there, and this is the final protein monomer, the final form of the protein. Role of chaperones. Chaperones are proteins in protein folding. This is very important. It is generally accepted that the information needed for correct protein folding is contained in the primary structure of polypeptide. It is expected that protein begins to fold in stages during its synthesis, rather than waiting for synthesis of the entire chain to be totally completed. The lines which I underline, the points, these are very important regarding MCQs. Remember, a specialized group of proteins named chaperones, which are also called heat shock proteins. These chaperones are required for the proper folding of many species of proteins. The chaperones, which are also known as heat shock proteins, interact with the polypeptide at various stages during the folding process. Many chaperones are heat shock proteins, that is, proteins expressed in response to elevated temperatures or other cellular stresses. So chaperones save the protein from these factors. The reason for this behavior is that protein folding is severely affected by heat, and therefore some chaperones act to prevent or correct damage caused by the misfolding. So you can imagine the importance of these chaperones for proper and final folding of the protein. Some chaperones are important in keeping the protein unfolded until its synthesis is finished, or act as a catalyst by increasing the rates of final stages in the folding process. So at some stages it keeps the protein unfolded till the translation is completed, or in other stages it acts as a catalyst. It rectifies the final stages of the protein folding. Some chaperones protect proteins as they fold. So misfolding of the protein is also checked by the chaperones. Chaperones are found, for example, in endoplasmic reticulum, because that is the site where the proteins are synthesized, especially rough endoplasmic reticulum. Since protein synthesis often occurs in this area. Now, denaturation of proteins. Denaturing agents are heat, organic solvents, mechanical mixing, strong acids or bases, detergents, and ions of heavy metals such as lead and mercury. All these can denature the proteins. Most proteins, once denatured, remain permanently disordered. You simply break the interactive forces, especially the disulfide bridges, the protein will be denatured. Denatured proteins are often insoluble and therefore they precipitate in the solution. Now the quaternary structure. When different polypeptides they join with each other by interactive forces, this is the quaternary structure of the proteins. In most cases, the interactive forces are non-covalent, like which are present in hemoglobin, or in selective cases like immunoglobulins, the interactive forces in the quaternary structure of protein, they are covalent interactions. Now, quaternary structure of proteins. Many proteins consist of a single polypeptide chain and are defined as monomeric proteins. However, others may consist of two or more polypeptide chains that may be structurally identical or totally unrelated. The arrangement of these polypeptide subunits is called the quaternary structure of proteins. Subunits are held together by non-covalent interactions, for example, hydrogen bonds, ionic bonds, and hydrophobic interactions. Subunits may either function independently of each other or may work cooperatively, as in hemoglobin, in which the binding of oxygen to one subunit of the tetramer increases the affinity of the other subunits for oxygen. Now, example of the protein structure regarding the structure of human insulin. Insulin consists of two polypeptide chains A and B, having 21 and 30 amino acids. You can see alpha chain is having 21 amino acids and beta chain 30 amino acids. Pre-proinsulin is having 110 amino acids. Proteolytic cleavage leads to separating 24 amino acids, which leads to the formation of proinsulin. So pre-proinsulin is converted into proinsulin having 86 amino acids, and finally the connecting peptide in the proinsulin molecule, it is separated, and that is having 35 amino acids, and then insulin become active having 51 amino acid. This is the overall structure, presentation of the insulin. You see, this is the beta chain. This is alpha chain. This is a C peptide having 35 amino acid. This is the signal peptide. So this signal peptide is separated, C peptide is separated, and active insulin we get having this beta chain and alpha chain, which are united with each other by disulfide bridges. Protein misfolding. Protein folding is a complex trial and error process that can sometimes result in improperly folded molecules. These misfolded proteins are usually tagged and degraded within the cell. You see, the folding process in the presence of chaperones is a hit and trial method. The proteins keep on changing the different shapes till their interactive forces overweigh the repulsive forces, and that becomes the final folded form of the protein. This quality control system is not perfect, and as the age advances, intracellular or extracellular aggregates of misfolded proteins can accumulate. The excessive accumulation of the misfolded proteins may lead to two different very serious clinical conditions: amyloidosis and Crohn's disease. First, we discuss amyloidosis. Misfolding of proteins may occur spontaneously or be caused by a mutation in a particular gene, which then produces an altered protein. Some apparently normal proteins can, after abnormal proteolytic cleavage, take a unique conformational state that leads to the formation of long fibrillar protein assemblies consisting of beta-pleated sheets. Accumulation of these spontaneously aggregating proteins called amyloidosis. I will show the picture in the next slide. So accumulation of these spontaneously aggregating proteins called amyloidosis has been implicated in many degenerative diseases, particularly in the neurodegenerative disorders, Alzheimer's disease. You can see the process of amyloidosis here in the different diagrams. Here is the abnormal cleavage. These are the beta sheets. Enzymatic cleavage. This cleavage leads to accumulation of these sheets, beta sheets, which is called amyloid. Spontaneous aggregation to form insoluble fibrils of beta-pleated sheets. So due to abnormal cleavage, it leads to accumulation of beta sheets here. Here is another diagram showing the amyloid fibrils, and photo micrograph of amyloid plaques in a section of temporal cortex, because this amyloidosis or amyloid may affect different organs of our body. So here in the temporal cortex from a patient with Alzheimer's disease. So Alzheimer's disease is an example of amyloidosis. Amyloid is an abnormal protein that is usually produced in our bone marrow and can be deposited any tissue or organ. There are different types of amyloid. Amyloidosis frequently affects the heart, kidneys, liver, spleen, nervous system, and digestive tract. Severe amyloidosis can lead to life-threatening organ failure. Alzheimer's disease is an example of amyloidosis. This is important from examination point of view. It accounts for 60 to 70% cases of dementia. Dementia means a loss of memory. It is a chronic neurodegenerative disease that usually starts slowly and gets worse over time, because as the age advances, the accumulation of these amyloids, they become too severe enough to interfere with the function of the different organs. The most common early symptom is difficulty in remembering recent events, short-term memory loss. The very first presentation of Alzheimer's disease, the first usually complaint of the patient of this disease is a recent loss of memory. As the disease advances, symptoms can include problems with language, disorientation, including easily getting lost, mood swings, loss of motivation, not managing self-care, and behavioral issues. No treatment stop or reverse its progression, although some medications may temporarily improve the symptoms. The other form of amyloidosis is the prion disease. Prion disease is caused by the causative agent is prion protein. This is the infective agent. That is why the name of the disease is derived. Prion protein is the causative agent, and the disease is Prion's disease. It presents in two forms, in humans and in animals like cattle. Because it is affecting the brain, so it is known as transmissible spongiform encephalopathies. TSEs is an abbreviation for these encephalopathies. In humans, it is rare, but when it affects the cattle, commonly known as a mad cow disease, 100% mortality rate is there, and when we eat the cattle meat, we become infected. Single protein species that is not associated with detectable nucleic acid, that is not encoded by the DNA. This infectious protein is designated as the prion protein. It is highly resistant to proteolytic degradation. So prion disease, it is presented by TSEs affecting the humans or affecting the animals, most probably the cow. What happens? What is the mechanism of this prion protein action? Is that this is the normal protein present, having alpha helix structure. You can see here, this is non-infectious, contains alpha helices. Now what happens? This is infectious prion proteins having beta sheets. Excessive beta sheets are present. What will happen? It is going to affect this normal protein. The result will be the alpha helices will be replaced by beta sheets. You can see here, this normal protein becomes now infectious, as the primary helices are replaced by the beta sheets. interaction of the infectious prion protein molecule with the normal prion protein causes the normal form, this is the normal form, to fold into the infectious form. So in the next step, these two also become infectious for the other normal proteins. So mechanism for multiplication of infectious prion agent, this is the mechanism. The infective agent is thus an altered version of a normal protein, which acts as a template for converting the normal protein to pathogenic conformation. This is pathogenic conformation of this normal protein. No primary structure differences or alternate post-translational modifications have been found between the normal and infectious form of proteins. The difference is simply that the alpha helices of a normal proteins are being replaced by the beta sheets, and definitely the total function capability of that particular protein will be changed. The key to becoming infectious apparently lies in the changes in the three-dimensional conformation of the prion protein. Number of alpha helices present in non-infectious prion protein are replaced by beta sheets in the infectious form. This is the key point to remember regarding prion disease or mad cow disease. The TSCs, transmissible spongiform encephalopathies, are invariably fatal, and no treatment is currently available. So once any species is affected by prion disease, its mortality is 100% confirmed. Thank you very much for today's lecture. Inshallah, we'll meet again in our next lecture. Stay safe, stay blessed.